Hello, and welcome to this week's lecture on mobile marketing with the use of social networks. So hopefully by the end of this chapter, after listening to this and reading the chapter, you'll understand the following. One area that you want to be sure and remember is how people are using mobile devices, how they access the internet using those mobile devices, and what social platforms they're using. Which platforms are they using to buy things on, search things on, are they seeing ads on, so on. Um, which devices and which services are winning and losing uh, the market share of consumers that are shifting to mobile. And then when we look at the apps, what apps do people use in order to go ahead and buy things or look for things? Is that something we want to concentrate on? And then what kind of activities do consumers do? And so this is not a very long chapter, but the outline and things that you should understand and get out of this are quite lengthy. The chapter also talks about, what things should you be posting when you want to do your own personal brand. I've seen ads of people that have graduated and they're professional people, but they're standing around with bottles of alcohol in their hand every time they post something on Instagram or Facebook, and so that becomes their brand. And so now every time somebody thinks of that person, that's what they're being associated with. And so as you build your own brand, think about what images and what things that you are putting out there, and that's going to be identified with you, and that's going to be your brand that people will recognize. We'll also look at some specific things like, should you have a buy button on one of your social networking sites? So it might be like the Amazon button where if you see an item, you could just purchase it right away. Um, and then we'll look at what is that experience that you're giving to your customer through all the different channels that they might be accessing to look at your product or service. And then we'll look at the best practices for social media marketing. As you might have guessed, mobile using the smartphone devices and tablets has just grown exponentially over the past few years, and it continues to grow. The book is, a couple of years old and its data that it used, but it's continuing to grow past that. More and more people are shopping this way. They're doing everything on those devices. So part of your marketing mix when you're looking at things is to use or design for those mobile devices. Some other things that you should be aware of is that there's a decreasing popularity in check-in apps where people are looking at different things and then they get data to see if they've checked in or not. The use of using location data to also find out where your customers are, what they're doing, when they're doing it, and so on. And that as people get more engaged with their different types of social media, you have to be aware of what platforms they're using and how they're using that on their mobile devices. So you want to be able to engage with them and not have it difficult for them to do that engagement when you're on those different social media platforms. Some people have even gone so far as to say use a market first, or not market first, a mobile first strategy, sometimes referred to as audience first. And what they mean by mobile first is that when you're designing, say, a website or designing an app, think about how that's going to work on a mobile device and how that's going to be used there. How is somebody going to navigate your site or the information you're putting up there? It should be designed for a mobile app first, and then think about the desktop version of that app. or that web page. And then also think about, not only are your customers using the social media platform of some type, using a mobile app, but they may use a desktop to do further searches on your product or service, or they may use a tablet, and it's all got to be integrated. And so that's what we mean by this second item here, the omni-channel strategy. And so when you have different markets that people are looking at, you want to be able to reach that consumer in all those different areas, because they may be using that in order to come up with a decision to buy your product. So the example that your book uses is how Home Depot came up with an app so that you could take a picture of a room and then you could change the colors in that room, so you can see how paint might look on your particular walls or whatever you're doing. So you take a picture and then you can actually go in there and modify how the colors look to see how the impact might be. So you're engaging, you're then also have the ability to sell them the paint through this app, or they can choose that paint. So it's a nice feature to kind of lock in that customer. So current research says that, like 95% or higher people have smartphones. They're abandoning their desktops, and people are just using that in order to do their social media, their internet, and so on. And so we need to understand how that fits into what's coming for being able to market to consumers, and where the growth is and where the decline is going to be. So just to give you a snapshot of that, look at a global digital snapshot in terms of January 2015. You've got, the total population is this, of that, how many have internet. It's almost half here, and so on. And so you can see these different social media accounts, 1.685 billion unique mobile users, so on. And so you can just see that we're reaching just about everybody in the world. Here's a listing for February 2017. The current population, the internet users, and you can see active mobile social users now at 2.56 billion. So where penetration is going up and up and up. And we can look at some other information here. The Facebook usage analysis, how much that's increasing. Let me look at this annual growth. We can see that population internet users, it's up 10% since last year. Active social media users up 21%. Unique mobile users up 5%. Active mobile social users. Right. So again, it continues to grow and grow and grow. So I just wanted you to note that difference there. We've gone from 1.6 in 2015 to, so just from 2015 to 2017, we've almost increased this active mobile social accounts by 1 billion users. And so you're going to get more and more, and that just becomes a huge area for you to try and penetrate. So the next question to answer is, what networks are they using? And so the predominant network is Facebook. Then after that, it kind of depends on what region of the world and country you're in. So we'll look at, figures 12.3a and b, and to see where the next popular networks are in globally and in the U.S. I also wanted to point out that, if you look at the bottom here, we got the WhatsApp app is a messenger app that's very, very popular in, say, India, Brazil, Mexico. but it's not so popular in the US. I know I have relatives in Germany and they use that there as well. So it's an app where people can send text messages for free, send images with that, and it doesn't cost them as much. And I know that when my daughters were over in Europe for a semester, that we used the WhatsApp app to communicate with them. It was a little better getting information to and from them. And so, just again, depends on what area of the country you're located in when you're using these apps. But you need to understand what's more important in those areas so that if you're putting ads up, would you want your ad on a WhatsApp app or some other thing that's not very popular? You also have to realize that as prices come down on smartphones, people will start using them even more and more. Research has also found there's no loyalty to a certain platform, so you need to constantly be checking, where the greatest number of users for that audience that you're targeting. Right? For us in the United States, we can look at Facebook as being the most popular, and then we're looking at Twitter, maybe Blogger, LinkedIn, Google+, Pinterest, and so on. I would also suggest that you need to keep in mind that I saw a recent news article that said, the poor people in the world, they can finally access these smartphones, but they may not know how to type or how to actually put in information, and so the way they communicate is through voice. And so that last segment of the population that doesn't have good reading and writing skills, once they come on board and start using the internet, they're going to want to purchase items as well. And so you need to think about, how am I going to communicate with that segment of the market? And it's probably going to have to be through some kind of video, and you're going to have a way for them to communicate back with you, and they're going to use some kind of voice recognition system that'll be on their phones. And so depending if it's an Android or an iPhone, the Siri for iPhone then needs to make sure that that's going to work with your particular app or website, so that they can leave information or provide information that you need them to do. So here we have a graph that shows the leading social media platforms globally. So we have social networks and messaging and chat apps on voice over IP. So Facebook again, and then after that, you can see, I think this one's from China. It's a messaging app. Then we have Qzone, WhatsApp. You can see how popular it is, but it's not very popular in the United States. So you want to look for these types of graphs and information so that you can best use them when you're designing your marketing plan. And then if we look at just the United States, you can see again Facebook, and then we see YouTube becomes the second most popular. Then we go down through the rest. If we look over here, YouTube, do we even see it on here? I don't even see it. So it still has room for growth globally. To give you a little more information about which services are being used the most and which are declining in terms of audience or visitor traffic, we know that people are no longer watching TV, and they're not using their desktop in order to access information, and so that is a declining area. Not to say it's still not big, but it's less important than it used to be. People are spending more and more time on their mobile devices, and so they've shown that they're spending, it now exceeds the amount of time they spend on their desktop. A lot of video is being used. People are watching that. Again, I would go back. People like to see small clips. That means also they're going to have good internet access. Is your audience somewhere where there is good internet access? What are you going to do, or how are you going to reach them if they don't have good internet access? We know that the amount of purchasing and spending that people are doing is growing exponentially again, and it's much faster than the amount they're spending on advertising for desktop computers. Another area that you're going to see increasing in is that the amount of money that's going to go towards mobile ads. Currently, when this book was written, it says mobile ads represent 24% of the digital time, but only 8% of the ad dollars spent. So they're spending 92% of the ad dollars in some other area than mobile. And I think you're going to see, as people realize that that's what everybody is starting to use, you're going to see more advertising dollars go towards mobile. So keep that in mind when you're developing your plan. Some other things to keep in mind is that except for LinkedIn and Tumblr, then most people are using mobile to view those other apps or other websites. But still, we have a lot of people that might be using this on a desktop going there. You have apps like Foursquare and GoWalla that have some growth there, but then you have them, they sell out to the bigger companies, or the bigger companies incorporate them into their products. So you always need to be on the lookout for that as well. And I believe GoWalla was actually incorporated into Facebook, so it no longer exists. So if we look at this graph, you can see how different age groups are using smartphones. The largest age group for smartphones is this 18 to 34. People that are using tablets, the largest age group again is this 55 and older. Probably deal with an eyesight where they get larger text. And then people that are using desktop, you can still see it's the older age group that has the largest amount for the desktop, and then it becomes somewhere between 30-some% for the other groups. And so you see that declining, and actually you see here in these different age groups that the smartphone is much greater than the desktop usage. And so you can always be looking for different statistics. And so here we see that just looking at mobile versus desktop, 85% of the time Twitter users spent time on a mobile device accessing their Twitter accounts versus on a desktop. And if you think about it, how often do you really go to Twitter when you're on your desktop? It may be different when you're on a laptop. But I still say most people probably aren't thinking that they could access that on their laptop. And so, again, everything's moving towards mobile. So the next question is should you be developing your own app? And the answer is you probably should be, depending on the market you want to go after. So they are playing a major role in how mobile users are accessing social media. And so a lot of times people will use the Facebook app in order to access that. And so that's one of the largest apps that's out there in terms of usage. And then we have examples of how Starbucks is using their app in order to keep people engaged and to give away free items, but also make purchases through their app. And so you're going to see more and more of that. So again, we don't talk about app development, but you want to develop your app in such a way that you make switching by your customer difficult, so that it's not easy for them to switch to a competing product or service. If you think about it, this is exactly what the phone makers have done. They have created apps for that particular phone. Those apps then have high switching costs, so then you don't want to go buy an Android such as a Google phone or a Samsung phone. You stay with the iPhone. And if you want to upgrade, you're going to have to stay with that iPhone if you want to continue to use those same apps. So you want to apply that same concept to when you're developing your app. You want to lock those consumers in so they will continue to use that. So this graphic gives you the top mobile apps for 2014. You can see again, Facebook is at the top and then it goes down from there. Here's that same information in a slightly different form. These are the 15 most popular social networking sites as of September 2017. And we can see how many millions of users each of those sites have. And so again, Facebook, then YouTube, then Instagram, Twitter, so on. And these look all from the US. So again, be careful of what you're looking at. Make sure it's not just incorporating one region or one area of the world. So what exactly do people do when they're on their mobile devices? The two main activities is related to communications. So they're doing email and texting. Right? Email used to be the dominant killer app for the internet. Right? Now it is text messaging. The other activities then involve searching and participating in social networking. So that might be your Instagram, your Twitter, your Facebook, Facebook, and so on. Right? And a lot of people are trying to do a lot of things at once. If you'll notice, there seems to be sort of a sociological thing going on with families in terms of people get together and then all of a sudden they're on their phones looking at these social media sites instead of interacting with each other. Here we have a chart showing the different activities people use on their smartphones and tablets. Again, you see that email, depending on whether it's smartphone or tablet, is probably the greatest, followed by text messaging. People tend to do that more on their smartphones than they do on a tablet. Internet searches, then they finally get into social networking. Some people watch TV on their devices. Some people read the news. Then we have games and music and so on. So once you know what people are using their devices for and how often and where and at what time of the day, then you can better target them. But again, for this chapter, it's all about the mobile devices on these social networks. And I'm going to pause right there, and when we come back, we'll pick it up with mobilizing your personal brand.